Welcome again to the Real Collective podcast. My name is Brendan McKeigan. With me, as always, is Sean Tasse. And down in the comments below, you've got our Calendly links, so you can talk to us directly about anything that you want, even if it's just Game of Thrones. Today, we've got a special guest that you can see on the show. She is a professor. She is a real estate investor. And she teaches law at Carleton, business law at Carleton. Jessica-Ann Boiron is here. Jessica, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Sean, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm well. I'm excited to have Jess on. Jess, we've been friends for at least. Well, we were just talking about how time has been weird. So I feel like it's probably been at least 3 years, but I feel like everything's been at least 3 years. It's been longer than that. But yeah, it's been awesome to see your journey and to get to spend more time with you, because in that time you guys have moved to Ottawa, and it's been awesome to hang out and get to know you and get to know your family and stuff like that. And we're super excited to have you here because I think there are a lot of people who are real estate investors, and I think there's a lot of insight that you have into the particularities of investing, negotiating, the legal side of investing in real estate and what that all means. So we're happy to have you here and sort of unpack, as much as you'd like to of your brain and share your knowledge with us. So why don't you take a couple seconds to introduce yourself? Tell everybody who you are, and then we'll jump into some cool stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. So my journey in real estate started back when I was practicing law. So after law school, I worked at a large national law firm. I practiced corporate and commercial law with a focus on the energy sector.
Oh, cool.
And during that time is when I started my foray into real estate investing. So I bought, my first rental property during that time. And because I had a great income, I was able to qualify for loans, right? So I kept going for the second, the third, the fourth. And alongside my husband, we built out a flipping and wholesaling business. So eventually I migrated out of law and into the business world. And business world meaning real estate investing generally. So like I said, we flip houses. We also wholesale houses. I manage a significant rental portfolio across Ontario. And then I also have a couple of short-term rentals, Airbnbs, that I manage. So a pretty diversified real estate business. And my newest venture has been teaching at Carleton. I teach business law, which is really a combination of the two things I know and love most coming together. So that's been really, really fun. I've got 300 students in my class this semester. So it's been busy, it's been fun, but also very exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then plus, of course, you're also a mom, and you guys have a beautiful daughter. And so I guess you recently, I'd say probably in the last two or 3 years, you guys have you've moved, but your business has moved from sort of southern Ontario, and you're doing a lot more work up here and around Ottawa and Cornwall, Brockville, all that sort of eastern and not northern Ontario, but I guess eastern Ontario, right? And have you found anything that's been different? Because I know a lot of people have said, "Oh, well, it's different in Ottawa than it is in Toronto." What about from an investing point of view? Have you found a lot of differences there?
So there are some unique kind of intricacies about the Ottawa market that I actually love. So we moved here, I want to say about 2.5 years ago from Toronto. And really we expanded our home buying in the Ottawa area. And the majority of my rental properties actually are in Ottawa and the greater Ottawa area, like down to Brockville, like you said. And what I really love about the Ottawa market is that employment is a little bit unique in terms of, yes, we've got the federal government here, but in times of change and of transition, like we're experiencing right now, during pandemic and now post-pandemic with markets shifting, I really like the Ottawa market because the fundamentals are so strong for a real estate investor. We have jobs where they're very secure, and the federal government isn't really shrinking. There's no plan to really shrink the government. So if we have a big pool of potential tenants who have stable jobs, stable income, good pensions, that's really attractive to an investor. And the price points still work as rental properties.
It provided that you buy them right. You're in a very great position to be able to buy properties right, simply because of the business that you've built. And I don't know if you're going to do it, but I'll do it. Your business, your wholesaling business, I think, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I understand, is the pinnacle wholesaling business that all of the other investors in Canada look to in terms of the model that you've built out, which is a pretty big accolade to have built all of that, and to do it in such a way that doesn't just follow the law, but is also ethical in how you practice. And I think that's a really hard needle to thread, because there's so many realtors who look at it and say, well, that can't be ethical, right? And so it is a tough needle to thread, and I think you guys have done an exceptional job at it. So, yeah.
Well, thanks, Sean. Really, we're just trying to find win-win scenarios, right? For the vast majority of home sellers, working with a realtor is by far their best choice. But there is a small niche of people where there are certain things that we can offer and we can work together on that just works.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? There's a ton of different ways, different models to sell your house, and it's ignorant for us to think that the best fit model is always a realtor for every person. So, what do you look for when you're buying a property? So when you sift through a ton of different places, what is it specifically that you're looking for? And especially as the market's shifting now, what are the indicators? Obviously, you said in general, Ottawa is a strong market in terms of employment rates. What are the specific things that you're looking for in properties that you buy?
So if I'm looking at the property as a rental property, let's start with that kind of side of things. So I'm looking at it as a rental property. There are two main things that I always want to kind of check off at my high level checklist. And that's cash flow and potential future appreciation.
Right.
So when I'm looking at cash flow, I want to, and again, things are shifting now. So what I used to do a couple months ago has changed a little bit. So when I'm looking at cash flow, I'll run the numbers with current interest rates, but knowing that I can expect interest rates to go up a little bit, likely in the next little while. And so giving myself that buffer, right, of saying, well, interest rates are at X right now, but they might climb to Y. So I need to make sure that I account for that in my calculations.
Right.
And then also on the other side is potential future appreciation. So when I'm looking at which submarket I want to invest in, I'm looking at areas that are generally gentrifying or on an upward trend, and areas that long-term will have stability and a demand for rental housing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, and from a broad point of view, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? I think it's been hard in Ottawa proper to find a property that both cash flows and has potential for appreciation. I think if you want appreciation, you're typically more buying in the middle of the city, but you're not getting cash flow. And if you want cash flow, you're typically going to the outskirts, but then you don't have that appreciation potential. So it must be hard to find both, or I guess balance them against each other.
Yeah, and it's definitely a balancing act. And I think maybe the one thing I didn't mention was finding creative solutions where you can kind of try to hit both. So as an example, right now, I'm building out 2 coach houses on one of my properties. So they're single family homes. I had an option of either doing, a legal secondary suite in the basement as a secondary dwelling unit, or building out the coach house. And after running the numbers, it made more sense to build out the coach house just because we can push the rents up higher on 2 standalone properties. And I think it'll be more attractive to tenants long-term to have their own space, right? To have their own separate space. They do not share any walls with anyone else. We're separating the backyard such that each house on the lot now has their own dedicated backyard that's fenced in. So when I think about it that way, it's, I'm creating 2 properties from 1 property. And so that value add over the long term really can make the deal work, where otherwise it might not.
I think that's really smart. And you know what? There's a lot of people who aren't looking that way because coach houses are they're too new, right? It's the same thought process that people would have had about SDUs, for example, here 5 years ago, where it's become more and more commonplace. I just think people don't understand the costs associated with the coach houses, or what the potential rental difference is. Right. So,
and not only that, just cost of renovations. Like if you're going to put in an SDU and you need to fire rate everything on top of what was there before and cut that, you're almost better off doing a coach house, and especially, I mean, I know like the hospital area would be, I had some clients who were talking about doing a coach house and renting it out, because how many nurses and doctors just want to have a place close by that they can just grab? And I mean, there's definitely a market for those coach houses. And like you said, that sense of your own dwelling with no shared walls, that's a kind of a game changer than being in a basement apartment.
Yeah, it's true. I know. I remember at one point I found out that if you're in I think it's a 1.2 or something like that kilometer radius from the hospital, then there's subsidies that come from the hospital to the nursing students who are there. So there's a lot. There's so many different little things to pick up as you go along. And the last question I have for you, Jess, before we break, is what have you learned from being a professor at university that you're like, oh yeah, this is great, I'm going to apply this into my business? Has there been anything that's like, oh yeah, this is perfect, I'm going to put this in place? Or is it the other way?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think to answer that question, it's very much, I'm now surrounded by kind of the next generation, right? These are the next generation of business leaders. I teach at the business school. So getting insight into, how their minds work, what they're looking for, kind of what those future trends are, has been really, really cool. But it's a little bit more the reverse, where, my legal experience and my experience as an entrepreneur and business owner, bringing that into the classroom, I found is so valuable, because I've heard from a number of students where, a lot of the instructors that they have are very much focused on academia and publishing articles and doing research, but they're not always getting that hands-on real life experience from their instructors. And so, me teaching, and part of the business law course, we talk about property law. And so me actually being able to give them real world examples of some of the issues that arise in property law transactions makes them so much more motivated and engaged in the classroom. Versus just giving them the theoretical, lay of the land in terms of the law and leaving it there. So that's been actually really, really great to be able to bring in that practical experience into the classroom.
Yeah. I bet I can imagine being a student there versus being the student in the classroom, especially if some of the instructors or professors have been in the classroom for 20 years, they might be so far removed from it. It's interesting that you mentioned that. These groups of they're kids, right? They're younger. I'm old. It's interesting to think of, okay, well, this is the next generation of business leaders, and to take the difference in mindset and use that, I think moving forward is I think they'd be really keen in terms of building out, because you're going to be hiring these people in 4 or 5 years, right? And so to know how your business is built in a way that they're going to want to be a part of it, I think is forward thinking in my mind. But
Absolutely. All right. I think that's a good spot to take our first break. It's also our only break. So we're going to go do that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and book an appointment with us in the Calendly links below. We will be right back. Here's a word from our sponsor.
This episode of the Real Collective podcast is brought to you by Real Collective. Real Collective brings together best-in-class real estate agents and collective experts in the field to deliver the best possible service to our clients. We govern ourselves with honesty, open-mindedness, and compassion. With diverse skill sets, our agents are able to better serve a wide array of clients, including first-time buyers, first-time sellers, transferees, estate sales, investors, and rural, vacation, and luxury properties. Authenticity and transparency are pillars of our process, which allows us to put our clients at the center of everything we do. Our years of experience and knowledge allow us to deliver prestigious service and optimal results. If you are interested in buying or selling your home, contact us today at realcollective.ca.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second half of the RCP. That's right. Acronyms, they're back, baby. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Sean and Jessica are both still with me. And we're going to get into the second half here. Sean, why don't you bring up what was on your mind that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, you've done just words. so many different transactions, so many different purchases, so many different sales. One have been some experiences that you've had working with agents, some great ones, some not so great ones. And again, the idea here is to shine some light on people who might want to be investors or who are investors. It's like, hey, here's a thing to do, or here's a way to do it, or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're buying houses across Canada. So yes, in Ontario, that's our biggest market. We're focused here, but we're also buying in Montreal and an area. And so we're working with realtors there and like in BC as well. So we've got 2 listings in BC right now with realtors on the market. So for me, really, the important thing is knowing the realtor you're going to work with and what their strengths are. Because for different properties, so for a commercial property versus a residential property, you might turn to a different realtor that has expertise in that specific area. At the same time, for me, location-specific experience is also important. So I always look to find a local realtor. So, for example, out in BC, I'm very, very far removed from that. And so I want a realtor out there that I can trust to work with, that knows that local market inside out, because I might not. And so especially one of the properties we're doing some work on, the realtor out there has been great helping us find trades. We had to do a well and septic inspection. The realtor had contacts in that local area and was able to get us set up to get those inspections done quickly and efficiently. Knowing what buyers in the area are looking for. So if I'm doing renovations to that house, I want my realtor to understand who the target or most likely buyer will be for that house and what kinds of finishes are they looking for. Do we put in laminate countertops, or are they looking for quartz? Will they pay that additional premium to have nice stone quartz countertops, as an example?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's understanding the market you're in, but also relying on the realtor to understand their market and having that expertise. And I've had some great experiences with realtors, on the creative front as well. So one example I was just thinking of is when I was buying a house I call Annie the A-frame. She's an A-frame out in Bancroft in the woods, surrounded by evergreens, and she was listed on the MLS. She wasn't called Annie back then.
Real quick question. Do you name all of your houses, or is this one special?
This one is actually pretty special. So I've named a couple houses, but they're usually just known by the street names they're on. But Annie is an exception because she's an exceptional property.
Excellent.
So before Annie was Annie and before she was mine, I found her on the MLS. And I reached out to the listing agent and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this house. I think it was listed for right around $50,000, somewhere around there. This is a few years ago now. And he had gotten a swarm of offers as soon as he listed the house. And so right away, Annie got picked up by someone. And so in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, oh, that A-frame, I really wanted that A-frame. And something, I just got this, like my intuition kind of spoke to me. And I said, let me reach out to that agent and see what happened with that A-frame. Maybe they have got a different one. Maybe they got a lead on something else. I called him back and he said, you won't believe this. The deal just fell through a couple minutes ago. The buyer backed out. And I was like, what do I do? Like, I'll give you your ask price. I'll give you a firm offer, no conditions. I want this house. What is it going to take to get the house? And we actually worked together on it. And, I ended up buying the house. I actually ended up getting a reduction, which is pretty funny because there was so much interest. I went to go see the house and there was one of the neighbors was breeding dogs at the time. So there was a lot of barking and I managed to get a reduction down to, I think it was $42,000 is what I paid for the house. But it was a full house with a septic system and a well. And I had to put a new septic system in, but it's a great house now. I run it as an Airbnb. I did a full renovation on it. It's beautiful. But sometimes it's just timing and follow-up that get you over the hump, and a realtor that's willing to work with you, that knows you're serious, that can tell, you've got a good track record, you've closed on properties, you're going to be a good buyer, and just willing to work with you there.
There's some great lessons to pull out of that story. I think follow-up is so key, right? Like it's never a no until it's a no, right? And because it sounds like what you had before was a not now. Sounds like you got super lucky about timing. That has a lot to do with, like you said, it was an intuition thing, right? I think that's really cool. I have
this great saying I always love is, you can't get hit by the money bus if you're not standing on the street. So you got to be standing there waiting for that money bus to hit you. Because if you're on the sidelines or on the sidewalk, it's not going to come. You got to put yourself out there and always be present, always be following up, always be top of mind.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Hit by the money bus. I also in the previous story, I like the idea of having a team because your business has grown so much. I think more and more you're having to rely on people around you to do the work and to do it sort of to your standards, right? And you guys have done a good job of everybody who's a part of your team who I've interacted with has always been upholding their end of the piece, and just it's always been good interactions that I've had with everybody who I've interacted with who's on your team. So it seems like you've done a very good job of hiring as well.
And hiring is so important. It's so critical. Because as you grow larger and larger as an organization, there's a company culture that you want to uphold. And so every new person you bring in, you're not only looking at what skills do they have and how can they help in our organization, but also how will they impact the culture and the culture that we want to see within our business. And we're very much all about ownership. Owning what your role is, but also owning the greater task or the greater property that we're working on. And really it's a collaborative workspace for us. So that's really nice to hear.
It's true. And I think that's why we get along so well, because we're the same way, right? Like the whole idea of the collective is it is collaborative, right? Everybody's working together. The other piece I wanted to touch on is you've got your crew, you've got your people who are also real estate investors. So you're always bouncing ideas off other people in this business and in this industry who you can, get away for a weekend with, like a girls' weekend. And my guess is you might have like 1 or 2 glasses of wine, but you're spending all of your time talking about deals and negotiations and all that kind of stuff. Even if you are, getting away from it, you still kind of don't get away from it, do you?
No, you don't. And we definitely talk about, I was actually just in Georgia, in Blue Ridge in the mountains there. And I had a great meetup with some of my real estate investor friends from across the US. And we totally talked about deals a lot of the time, but it's in a way that helps lift each other up. And so it's working through issues and trying to give each other advice on, hey, have you thought about this? Have you looked at that? Hey, I know this great lender. Maybe they could lend on your property. It's a lot of that back and forth, just support. So yes, support in business stuff, but also support on emotional and mental health, which we don't talk a lot about in this space, but it's so important. As an entrepreneur, it's so easy to get burnt out because you are the person that all the issues come to, and you have to make those decisions. And it's hard. Like sometimes I got decision burnout where I made like 50 decisions in a day and I'm out. I can't make any more decisions. Like my brain is it's overworked, right? And it's something we also don't talk about is how lonely sometimes it can be being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's you yourself. Yes, I've got this great team that works with me, but a lot of the burden and all of the growth lies with that business owner and that entrepreneur. And so recognizing that and surrounding yourself with others who are in a similar position, like me going and spending time with, my real estate investor friends, it's refreshing because they're going through those same issues. We can talk about them in a really candid and open way and really be vulnerable with one another about what's going on in the business, the great things that we see on Instagram and on the reels, but also the really hard stuff that you don't put out there, but that is really, really critical to maintain that level of sanity.
Absolutely. All of the small business owners that I speak with, it's the same thing. It's, man, this is lonely. Like I'm at the, I'm the boss. So I'm here and I've got, like you said, I've got a good group and a good team here to help me out, but I feel alone because I'm making these decisions and am I making the right decision? There's no playbook. There's no roadmap and it's, you're just trying to make you try and make the right choice with the information that you have and, your values and your ethics and continue to move forward. And I think that's all you can do. Right. The other piece for me that stood out for you is when we were working together on a project. We were in negotiations, your understanding of the the technical aspect of negotiation, specifically using the word anchoring. I've never heard the word anchoring. And when we were doing a deal, you're like, okay, well, we can't go to this price because if we go that low, then we're going to be anchoring ourselves and we're going to set that new price. I'm like, oh yeah, that it's something that I do innately, but I've never put a word to it. So to hear you come from like a technical point of negotiations, like, okay, well, this is like, what you're doing like really well, like not just like, hey, yeah, I do this, but like, you've studied it, and it shows.
Well, thank you. That probably takes me right back to my lawyer days, right? Because negotiation was a huge part of what I did as a lawyer. I was in a transactional environment, so it was deals. So a lot of that I brought into the real estate world, right, and kind of adapted it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we go, what is the one deal, or other than any of the A-frame, but like what's the deal that you're like, oh, here's story time. This was terrible. Never do this. Or on the other side, this worked out so well. I can't believe this actually happened. Putting you right on the spot, Jess.
Yeah, no, do it. Oh, there's so many things I can think of. I'm thinking recently we bought a 24-unit building. And again, it was multiple offers and we were not the top offer. Another offer was accepted. That offer fell through. And I don't know if this is a common theme with me, but the offer fell through and we got in there and it was all about putting together a really creative deal. So we paid actually $400,000 over their asking price, which was a lot. It was a big amount more. But at the end of the day, we knew that they wanted a top dollar for their property. That was their motivation. And so we said, okay, how can we give them top dollar, but also figure out a way that we can make it work financially on our end? And so we proposed a vendor take back mortgage to the seller. We got an 84% VTB, 4% interest for 5 years with an option to renew at 6% for a further 5 years. So 10 years for 5% if we want it, which in today's market is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So yes, we paid a lot more, and we really tried to figure out what works for them, but also try to figure out, okay, if we give you what you want, how can we twist it in a way that we're also happy at the end of the day and also making money, and everyone has that win-win. So people probably thought we way overpaid, but not knowing that we came to a really great deal where we would never have gotten that loan to value from a regular lender.
Right.
We wouldn't have gotten these rates from a regular lender right now. And we're not hit with fees. We're not hit with we're hit the ground running right away. Yeah. And so we were able to save some money for the renovations we need to do.
I feel like the theme of today is you are a deal scoop master. Like you are like ninja buying, like just coming, here's my window. I've got like an hour, boom, like just a SWAT team, like a deal extraction. Like here's my chance, activate. That's the sense that I get.
Yeah, well, and you know very well, Sean, like we tried to swoop in this couple days ago, this weekend. It didn't work out. They don't always work out, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So just take those shots.
Michael.
Wayne Gretzky. Michael Scott.
Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan?
No, it was Wayne Gretzky.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, I kind of feel like maybe you have one of those core group of friends is an intimidation team. And once people make an offer on something, you send out the goons, and they have their lead pipes, and they just say, "Your financing didn't go through." It's like, yes, our financing didn't go through.
That's what it is. That's what the meetups are for.
Yeah, a couple great pickups there. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jessica-Ann, for being on the show. We really appreciate it. We are going to wrap things up here. If people wanted to get a hold of you, where's the best way to do that?
You can find me on social media at JessLuc Invest, JessLuc Invest on Instagram and on Facebook.
Perfect. All right, so check them out. And until the next one, we have our Calendly links below if you want to talk to Sean or I about anything that you heard today or any other episode or your own real estate needs. Real estate needs being the most cliche term in real estate, but we'll talk about them. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe on or share on YouTube, plus Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That would be lovely. So until the next one, I'm Brendan McKeigan. This is Sean Tasse. And until the next one, keep it real.
Collective.